Hi, this is Miss Malini, and you can see a lot of Team Miss Malini is here. We're so excited to have our very first Book Club Google Hangout. Of course, we hang out with a bunch of Bollywood TV stars, and we do all sorts of stuff with cricket as well, but we thought it's kind of important that we go back to reading books. So we've decided to do this, and our very first book, which I'm so excited about, is called Dear Daughter by Elizabeth Little, who's actually joined us to be in this hangout, which is all kinds of amazing. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. So you know what happened is I was looking for books for us to read to be part of our first book club, and I chanced upon Oprah's list of books to read, and Elizabeth Little is on that list.
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, let's read this one, and it's kind of cool because it kind of has a paparazzi, social life feel to it, and I'm like, that's so up our alley. So we're like, let's read this one, and then I emailed Elizabeth, and lo and behold, she sent us copies of the book, which are signed, which you can win, and she's also joined us for the hangout. So where are you right now, Elizabeth?
And my cat as well. I'm at home.
Where in the world?
Yes, she'll be probably joining us, and yeah, my son is asleep, so I'm in our living room.
Where do you live?
An adult conversation.
And where in the U.S. do you live?
Oh, I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, Los Angeles, very nice. In LA. Yeah. Actually, Anushka will be going there for Coachella very soon. So very excited.
Fall is coming up, so you'll be in Palm Springs. Yeah.
So I'm going to introduce very quickly the rest of our guests. Of course, you know Rashmi and Anushka, who I'm very excited also read because that's one of the prerequisites of MissMalini. We have Shrimi, who's also dialed in. Hi, Shrimi.
Hi.
Shrimi, actually, I have to tell this story, and I love doing this. So Shrimi has a code name that she used to write under called Hurliskar. Hurliskar. Can you explain why you have that name?
This is her favorite story ever.
Oh my God. No, it's not my favorite story, but okay, fine.
My favorite.
So yes, it is. Her was for Hermione Granger, Liz was for Lisbeth Salander, and Scar was for Scarlett O'Hara, who are my three favorite characters from three different books. And yeah, I think that is the only reason Malini hired me, otherwise I have no talent whatsoever.
Literally, I sent an email out, I sent it to the group, the whole office, and they're like, hire her immediately. It's all kinds of amazing. We also have two young authors who are joining us from India, which I'm very excited about. We have Asta. Hi, Asta.
Hi. Hello.
So Asta actually is very talented, writes for magazines, and has written her first book. Tell us the name of your book, Asta.
My second.
Sorry.
While Games Girls Play, I got a copy to show everyone.
Nice. Awesome. Games People Play. And we also have Tina Sharma, who actually is one of my oldest friends. We both went to school together, and then we rediscovered each other in Mumbai. So Tina is also an author. She's also a presenter. She's, I don't know what you call them when you're very serious news presenter, so not a fluffy journalist like us, who's also written a book. Tell us the name of your book, Tina.
It's right here. It's called Who Me, and I might be a very serious journalist, but my book is not serious at all.
So we decided to do this hangout today so we could talk about this book, which we really loved reading, and we're actually giving away some signed copies. So first of all, Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about this book?
Sure. Well, it sort of all started one day when I got a Google News alert that Amanda Knox was going to be released from prison, which is obviously in the news again right now. And I got that email and I sort of thought, like, what is her life going to be like now? It's this paparazzi darling. We don't actually know anything about her. We just know this, this like vision that's been created by the media. And I was like, what is she going to do? Is she going to start a new life? Is she going to go back to her old life? And sort of it went from there. I really wanted to explore this character who was so infamous, but fun, and like also maybe a murderer.
I mean, all of us have that little feeling inside. I think we also have Mishti, who's joined in from the Team MissMalini office, whose actual name is Nityami. Hi, Mishti. She's a little bit frozen at the moment. Okay, so we're going to go around and ask you a couple of questions, and then, of course, read our favorite passages. And we also have a lot of questions that came in on social media, so we'll ask those too, and we're going to give the best questions some prizes. So take it away, Rashmi.
Okay, so my favorite part of this book, honestly, is that the character is so, like, she's not exactly likable, but you still Like, if I knew her in real life, I'd probably not get along with her at all. But as an
I
actor,
feel that way too.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, was this intentional? And were you worried at any point that, if the reader doesn't like, my main character, is this going to be a problem for me?
Yeah, the question of likability and unlikability is a tricky one, I think, especially for female authors. I don't think that male authors have to sort of face the same standards. You can write the worst dude who, like, cheats on his kid, and everyone's like, oh, that's so powerful. But for women, it's trickier because I know when I read a book, I want to enjoy spending time with the character. So with Jane, it didn't make sense that she would be nice. Given her circumstances, she was not going to be a sweet girl. But I wanted her to be entertaining and hopefully someone you could root for, even if you didn't necessarily want to, be her best friend. And hopefully over the course of the book, she softens in her own way.
I love how
snarky,
she's very snarky, and I love that she'll judge people's outfits and their hair in the middle. So Anushka, do you have a question?
I kind of felt the same way about Leo, if you know what I mean. Like, in the beginning, I was like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
But then towards the end, I was like, okay, I can see this happening. But then after she was, like, in the room with him, and then she left, and she found out that he took those papers from her coat, I was like, do I still like him? Do I not like him? I was like, I'm a little bit iffy.
Also, I love the fact that there's some use of social media and tweets, and without a trace, this like evil journalist, and I was like checking myself. I'm like, do we paparazzi people like that? But for anyone who's joining in, remember you can send in your questions live with the hashtag #MMFridays, and you could win a signed copy of Dear Daughter. Just to quickly recap, Elizabeth, tell us a little summary of what the book is about for everyone who's joining in now.
Sure. The heroine's name is Jane Jenkins, and 10 years ago she was convicted of murdering her mother, who was a famous socialite, and Jane herself was very much a sort of Paris Hilton character. So she was convicted in this trial of the century, sent to jail. 10 years later, she's released on a technicality. And so now Jane is setting out to discover who really killed her mother. And to do that, she has to go to South Dakota, to like a crummy little town in the middle of nowhere, this like LA girl. And so she begins to investigate her mom's murder. But, the problem is that Jane actually doesn't know who did it. So the killer she's looking for might be herself.
Wow. And she's confused. She doesn't really know if she's done it. All right, so let's go over to Asta. Tell me what your question is for Elizabeth.
First of all, I want to say that she's nothing like Paris Hilton. She's too smart.
She's too smart.
I said she's nothing like Paris Hilton.
Yes.
Her one-liners, I love her one-liners through the book.
But, oh, good. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I was, Rashmi was talking about likability, and I think after Gone Girl, that's been a big question with female writers, about creating characters who are not likable and who are committing crimes and stuff like that. So did you, what kind of research went into creating this town? Do you know such a town? Have you ever been there? What kind of research went into that?
Yeah, it's a totally made up town. I've been, for my last book, which was nonfiction, I spent a lot of time sort of traveling through the U.S. Growing up, I grew up sort of like right in the middle where there's not a whole lot to see. So my childhood vacations were driving to other places. So I'm pretty familiar with South Dakota, and I live in Los Angeles, so that part of it didn't require very much research. I just wanted it to be, someone actually here in Hollywood was asking me, they were like, how would you describe South Dakota? Because, like, I've never been there. What would you say? And I gave them this long lyrical passage about, like, the sunlight and cowboys and pioneer life. And then they're like, oh, no, I just meant, is it a big town or a small town? So it's a small town. Yeah, so I didn't do a ton of research except sort of building on my own experience. And, I just really wanted to write something that wasn't in New York, which was really fun for me to do.
Okay. Question that's come in on Instagram actually wants to know, how long did it take you to write this book? And did you have a target for yourself, or you just went with the flow?
Yeah, so this, so as I said, I'd been writing nonfiction, and I was really, my last book was really, really hard, and I thought maybe I want to try out fiction. So I gave myself, I think 3 months to sort of like get going, and I managed to get 100 pages then, and we sold the book on that. So I was very lucky in that I got to start getting paid before I finished the whole book. Otherwise, I don't know where the food would have come from. So it probably took me, all in all, I would say a year and a half, with only like a year of steady writing time, and then another 4 months editing.
Wow. Let's go over to Tina now. Tina, what is your question?
Okay, so I have to first of all admit I'm probably the only one in this whole group who hasn't finished the book. So if there are going to be spoilers, I'm just going to do this. Okay. But I'm about 100 pages short of the finish, and I absolutely love it, Elizabeth. I want to get back to that point that everyone was talking about, simply because the protagonist in this book is so strong. I mean, she's the one who carries the book through. And I don't think there's a question of likability, because I think you just absolutely love her. I don't know what men are going to think of her, but I really think that women are going to read this and go, man, she is like this badass, fabulous woman, and you just love her, So I want to know how much of you is there in her, because even just now you were talking about, coming up with this lyrical prose when people ask you questions, and Jane does that too sometimes when she thinks she goes into these, these very literary kind of bits of prose. How much of you is there in Jane?
Well, I mean, I certainly, I think that we have similar defense mechanisms in that I am definitely one to use a joke to deflect just about anything. I remember someone said to me, they're like, I'm worried she's not taking anything seriously enough. She keeps telling jokes. And I was like, have you met anyone who tells jokes? They take things too seriously. That's why they have to make jokes. And so that's definitely part of me. But the rest of it really was me like exploring my inner mean girl that I never was. In high school, I was the opposite. I was like the dork in the corner, reading like Pride and Prejudice 800 times in a row. So this involved some sort of like imagination. But it helps that I'm in Los Angeles again, so I'm sort of there.
I think Mishti has finally been able to join us. Mishti, can you hear us? Let's say a big hello. Mishti is actually our dance and fitness blogger, and she has moved here from Australia. So what's your question, Mishti? I think your microphone is a little bit slow. Hello? Uh-oh, I think Mishti will have to maybe send a message to us with her question. Sorry, a couple of internet issues. All right, let's go back to Shrimi. Let's call her Shrimi for a change. Hi, Shrimi.
Hello. My voice is echoing here. So, hi, I love the book. I really like Tina said before, characters who are strong, badasses, don't need a man to support them, all of that. I love that shit. So, because like this genre of Gone Girl-like books are something which is, which completely blew my mind. Jane was very likable, and she was like basically the star, and that was amazing. So my question to you is, to not give out any spoilers, will there be a sequel to Jane's story, because how it ends, I'm like, whoa, what happened there? So I want to know what happens, after, what happens. So, yeah, Tina, I'm doing this only for you. I'm not giving out any spoilers. So, yeah, is there going to be a thing which goes further? What is going to happen to Jane? Because she's amazing.
I am currently at work on my next book, which is due in July, and it is not a direct sequel, but Noah, who is her lawyer, this is his book, so he's narrating.
That is amazing.
I really like him, actually. I do too.
I love him too. He was supposed to disappear after like the second chapter, and then I wrote him. I was like, oh yeah, no, he needs to stay around.
He also sounds really good looking. In your mind, is he really hot?
Yeah. Yeah, sort of. I guess in my head I have like Matthew McConaughey, early Matthew McConaughey. So yeah, he'll be getting into some trouble because he's so good looking. In fact, so I'm working on his book right now, where he goes home to Mississippi, but Jane also shows up and some other characters, and it's also a mystery, but there's maybe more romance in this one than there was in Dear Daughter.
Wow, interesting. So actually, this is a good point. If this were to be made into a movie, which I think it really should, and actually this would be a perfect plot for a Bollywood movie as well, who would you imagine being cast as Jane in Hollywood?
That's such a hard question. I love Emma Stone.
Oh.
Who, I don't know if you guys have seen Birdman, but where she's like doing her sort of like dark, angsty sort of thing. And obviously I love Jennifer Lawrence. Like, who doesn't love Jennifer Lawrence? Like,
you hate bloggers, you don't understand social media. I love her for that.
Because you want someone who's funny. And I think, that's the key to what makes Jane so much fun, is that, she's dark and funny. I mean, I think Amy Dunn in Gone Girl, I think that's another thing that makes her so great. Even though she's a crazy person, she makes you laugh, so you're sort of willing to go along with it.
Yeah, that's true.
So actually, somebody has sent in a question, and this one comes in from Dia, and she says, and actually this is a good point, so you've written 2 nonfiction books, which is Biting the Wax Tadpole and Trip of the Tongue. How did you manage to get to this level, because it's very difficult to break away from, the fray of writers and get that recognition, so what's your story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar to a lot of writers, which is a combination of just working all the time as hard as you can and then dumb luck. I was working, when I got out of college, I went and I worked in publishing because I wanted to be involved with books, but I thought it sounded crazy to write one. Like, who gets to do that? No one. So I was working in publishing, and then I actually just got lucky. I just blind submitted a column to the New York Times, and they printed it. And from that, I got my first book deal. So it was really, I didn't have to go through the process of querying agents, which was really lovely, because I think that's a super scary process. And so then I wrote 2 nonfiction books, and then kind of had to totally change gears, because fiction is a different market. It's terrifying. My agent was like, please don't do that. But I think I came to this genre sort of at a very favorable time. I think that New York publishing houses are looking for a lot of female-driven thrillers right now, and so I benefited from that. So yeah, and then I just, I work like 60 hours a week, so I think that might have something to do with it.
That's tough. All right, we have some favorite passages which we'd love to share. So Anushka, why don't you tell us which one you'd like to read?
I'm not going to read it because it's really long, but it's basically the letter from her mom that she finds. I was like, what?
I had to take my bed after writing that. Whole day, and I was just, because I have a 4.5-year-old son, so I'm trying to sort of like think my way into the head of the woman who doesn't have the same feelings for her son as or for her child as I do.
Yeah.
I know, it's so nasty, isn't it?
I loved it.
She's so evil. She is very evil. Let's go back to Asta again. Asta, tell us, do you have a favorite passage that you'd like to read?
I don't have a favorite passage, but as a writer, what is really important to me, I mean, in any book I like, or any favorite writer, be it a Murakami or whatever, is always lines that make a difference. Like, one line can turn around a chapter, turn around a book, and that's what you remember from a book, Sometimes you just remember lines, So I had like some fun lines, like, I love it when she gets stopped by a cop and she's like, "Stop it, Jane. Now is not the time for personality." Like, herself, And then she says, she's looking through the wardrobe and she's like, "My mother could have never bought these because these are bought by someone who thinks Nordstrom sells high fashion." And it's fun.
I so
There's something her mother says that she says that you can get away with anything if you wear great clothes, throw great parties, and give away money to kids with cleft palates. I am going to follow that. So I like lines through the book which sort of tell you a lot about her, and they're funny, and they just like, they break the mood and everything. It's really, so I liked those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even for me, this comes very much towards the end of the book, so I'm not going to give the situation, but basically when the press is yelling at Jane and they're like, in the middle of everything, they're like, what are you wearing? Yeah. And that's such a, and it's so true and it's so crazy at the same time. The rack, let's never speak of it again. I was like, I love that. Those are the kind of lines that show you a lot about her personality. And like Asta said, it really breaks up a book that's so heavy and there's so much action happening at the same time. But you, like, then you have to pause and you're like, wow. I
also love the diary and the way the code is written. And I have to admit that I was reading this late at night and I was like, I just can't figure it out. And I'm like, I felt really stupid for a while. And then I was like, oh my God, I had this eureka moment. And I was like, that's amazing. So let's go over to Tina. Tina, do you have a passage or a question that you'd like to share?
Again, because I haven't finished, I'm sure there's lots more. But what I really like was this bit where she's remembering this party that she went to, and I liked it because it shows me that Jane is not the way she is only because of what's happened to her in the last 10 years. Because this party is the night before her mother's murder, I presume, and she's still very caustic and she's very sarcastic and she's quite the bitch, and so I love that because it's not like this tragic story of this really lovely sweet little girl who she's become this horrible person because of what she's gone through. So I like that, and I love the bit that she feels very protective towards these preteens, these 12 and 13-year-olds. And how she's quite nasty to her own peers, but I love the way she talks about that. I wanted to gather them up in a bear hug and spirit them away somewhere, someplace simple and straightforward, like I don't know, Glendale or Encino. No, I don't know Glendale, but I know what you mean. Yeah. And I love that whole bit, because even though she's being quite nasty and she's playing to the galleries with the drinking and the smoking in front of the kids, and she's doing all that through this party. But even when she walks off with that guy Grant or whoever she was, even then she remembers to toss her concealer at that poor little preteen girl, like this white problem. I think that was fabulous. I loved it. I thought that was so real because that's how people are. They're not all good or all bad. And yeah, for me so far, I really enjoyed that little flashback to that party.
Yeah, actually, it's the line about her wanting to take them away to Glendale or Encino is one of my very favorites in the whole book, because it's both getting at her sort of like protective side, but then even as she's being protective, she's still being an asshole. Like in that same sentence, she's still making fun of them and making fun of these places in Los Angeles. So yeah, that really gets at Jane, and she's so she doesn't want anyone to know she has a soft heart, so she's going to cover it up by any means necessary.
Yeah, which was really interesting to me. Now, I want to know, Elizabeth, what do you read? Like, do you read across genres, or do you read mostly thrillers? What do you actually read yourself?
I do. I read voraciously, and sort of, I will try anything. I have recently been reading a lot of other books in my genre because I've been getting them for free, which is really nice. What else? What am I reading right now? Sometimes I like historical fiction. I love science fiction. I love noir. I love classic noir a lot. So, Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett. And I also really love traditional British mysteries. So, like your Agatha Christie, your Dorothy L. Sayers.
Big fan.
And let's see, I've read a lot of really bad books lately, actually. Tonight I was like going through the book, and I was realizing that I was like, oh God, what if this book is as bad as all these other books I've been reading?
But I assure you, we all really enjoyed the book, absolutely. Actually, I think we will send you Asta and Tina's book, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you think. In fact, why don't you share, Asta, a little bit about what your book is about, and we can ask Elizabeth what she thinks.
Yes, I would love to.
I write something very different from Elizabeth. I write romance. And, my first book was a Mills and Bones, India's second Mills and Bones.
I love Mills and Boone. I have one of my best friends writes Harlequin Presents, which is Mills and Boone modern.
Yes. So mine was India's second Mills and Bones. And my second book is called Games Girls Play. It's about two girls living in Bombay, and actually the working title was The Prude and the Promiscuous. Complete prude and one is completely promiscuous, and how they both and the prude has to write a book, like a Sex and the City book, so she needs research, so she makes friends with the promiscuous girl so she can research her life, you know, and then obviously they find love with the men who are opposites of them. So the prude falls for the promiscuous guy, and the promiscuous one falls for like a good boy next door.
So, oh yeah, that sounds like a book I would read in a heartbeat.
And basically, it's about how we as women always also judge each other. We call each other a prude, or we call each other a slut as well. So the book was basically about how we can be anything. Prudes can also be promiscuous, and promiscuous girls can also be prudes when they feel like it. So it's basically about friendship at the end of it, and saying that girls can be anything they want, you know, and we should not tag them. Especially as women, not tag each other. So how they both become friends and get over their judgments over each other. So that's what the book was about.
And that's what I love so much about romance, about women's fiction, about this sort of new subgenre of thrillers that is dominated by women, is that it gives us a safe space to really figure out how women relate to each other and how we conceive of ourselves, and really explore all of this stuff while also writing incredibly entertaining books, which is way better than John Cheever, frankly. Yeah. And it's just really, it's exciting to me. Many of my closest friends are romance writers, and I'm a huge romance reader, you know, from those old school, you know, with Fabio on the front. I read all of those in college. My third one is a supernatural romance story for Harlequin. So he's going to be not a vampire. He's going to be an Indian supernatural creature, but not a vampire. It's just, I think that, you know, genre fiction gives us, it's really kind of like a subversive act for women to get to write these things and pen our own narratives and relay the female experience without having to channel it through men or to a male audience. So.
And I bet a lot of boys vicariously read these books, even though they're not willing to admit it. Absolutely. I know my husband was like, oh, and then I caught him because I was like, where's my book? Where's my book? And he's like, I was like, where'd it go? I was like, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. So he was definitely
it's like so many men like to watch Sex and the City. They will never admit it, but they watched it. So it's the same
references too. So Tina, why don't you share a little bit about what your book was about? Who, me?
Yeah, okay, I will. And before I do that, I just want to say that I have a lot of male friends who I know have read the book. They called me and told me what they think of it, but they refuse to tweet about it because they don't want people to know that they've read it. But I think it's because mine is very much branded, you know, as chick lit, even though I don't entirely agree with that. But my book is about a girl who thinks that her life has completely ended. She's devastated because she's ditched at the altar by her fiance, and she thinks that is the end of the world. And the book is about how she, you know, goes about trying to get him back, but actually in the process of doing that, how she picks up the pieces of her own life and you know, realizes what is most important, which is to actually love yourself. So it's a bit of a, you know, it sounds very serious. It's not. It's actually quite funny, but it's about self-discovery more than anything else, I think, and it's also about friendships, I think, as Asta was talking about, which is the role that her girlfriends play in just helping her pick up the pieces of her life and, you know, getting back on track and doing what she likes. So it's about friendship and love and self-discovery. That's what it is.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too, and I love that she also has a very snarky edge. I really enjoy when, you know, writers throw in those things, you know, in quotes and in italics, and you know, and you can hear it in their voice, because I mean, we all have that narrative playing in our minds as well. So Mishti has sent in her question, even though she's having internet questions issues. She wants to know, is there something or someone that inspired this book, and who is your inspiration or role model in general?
Well, the book was sort of, the character Jane was inspired by, a few characters. There's definitely some Paris Hilton in there on the surface. And then there's definitely some Hannibal Lecter there. To me.
Lindsay Lohan, too.
I wanted her to be cranky. And, I love sort of anti-heroes, sort of like House, Sherlock Holmes, those sort of characters. But I wanted to translate that into a female protagonist. In terms of my overall inspiration, I mean, like, I'm a big dork in that I'm really inspired by my friends. I think I spent a lot of time in my early 20s thinking I was one of those girls who couldn't I was like a guy's girl or whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm friends with guys. I don't really know how to relate to women. And as I've now in my 30s, I've surrounded myself with this group of women who are just so supportive and who I admire and who are so helpful. And they're really the people who keep me going. The people I dedicated the book to are two of my best friends, Kate and Sarah. And sort of, we would meet every single week in New York to drink like 2 bottles of wine and watch Gossip Girl.
Wow.
And that was like, the most important part of my week was sort of decompressing with the two of them. So they're the people who keep me going.
That's amazing. So Mishti, since she's here and can hear your answer, she wants to know in regards to your son, is he inclined to reading a lot, and does he show telltale signs of becoming an author one day himself? I know he's quite young. What do you think?
Well, because we're in LA and my husband is a filmmaker, our biggest fear is that our son will want to be an actor. And I have to say that he loves looking at himself in the mirror, and he loves telling jokes, terrible jokes, really terrible. So yeah, he enjoys looking at books. He's really into he's just such a little dude. He likes jumping off things and breaking stuff. So he doesn't seem like, so far he's quite the reader that my husband or I were, but maybe some creative stuff happening.
So I'm going to come back to Rashmi and Anushka. More questions?
Actually, what was also very interesting for me is how you broke up the narrative with TMZ clippings and Wikipedia clippings, and that's very relevant to us because that's what we do. So I loved seeing it, being used in a book this way, because you don't see it too often. And was there a reason in particular that you did this, or did it sort of happen naturally?
Sorry.
That's so cute.
It kind of happened naturally, but I really wanted to sort of see Jane through these different lenses, how Jane sees herself, how a screenwriter would see Jane, how a journalist would see Jane, how the paparazzi would see Jane. Because I think that's something that's really tricky for a lot of young women now, is to try to figure out like which mirror is the right mirror, and try to figure out who they really are. And when you have all of these competing narratives coming at you, like how do you pick and choose? How do you put them together into a cohesive whole? And also, I just wanted to break up the text. So, and it's a good way to sort of dump some exposition in there. But it was also really fun when I was sort of, I think the reader sometimes needs to get out of Jane's head, and I sometimes really needed to get out of Jane's head. So yeah, it was parts of the book that I really looked forward to writing.
Yeah, I liked reading them too a lot.
I really enjoyed those. So I have a question. Do you think Trace is going to come back in the next because I feel like he's not done being.
I don't think he is. For the one I'm working on right now, I don't think he'll show up in it, but I am not ruling anything out for the book.
You know what was really funny though? My mom came up to me and she was like, "What are you reading?" So I'm like, "Dear daughter," and she said, "What is it about?" And then I told her what it was about, and then I finished the book, and in the acknowledgement she's written, "Repeat after me, Mom. This is a work of fiction." Twice.
Yeah.
I did this twice.
There were a lot of people. I remember when the book first came out, and I was doing a signing at a convention. And people came up and they didn't know what the book was about, and they just saw it was called Dear Daughter, and they're like, "Oh, can I get a copy, and can you make it out to my mom? I'm going to give it to my mom." And I was like, "We don't want to think about that."
So we've got a question in from Monica, which is quite interesting. She says, how would you describe your book in 3 words?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Funny, feminist, noir.
Nice, absolutely. So Shrivi, I'm going to go over to you for one last question. We're almost out of time.
I really like the lines, you used in the middle where she gives these slogans to women, like multitudes, like insults, girls should always have one, stuff like that. It's really nice. It's not can you hear me?
Sorry, we couldn't hear you very well.
Okay, should I repeat?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I really like the one-liners you have in the middle, where Jane is giving these lectures in her own head to people around. So she's like multitudes and like insults, girls should always have one, and stuff like that. Firstly, how did you think of that? And secondly, in the sequel, when there will be one, will there be more of the detective who she had like a thing with? Will there be more of him?
Oh, will Leo be in the next book? I can definitely tell you that as of what I'm writing now, Jane and Leo are definitely together. They are definitely a demented couple. Like, I just had to have someone be happy, because like one of my friends was reading the book and she was like, you realize the only happy couple are the lesbians, and your husband's
And how did you come up with all those one-liners, the snarky lines in them? Oh, that was your other question.
Yeah, I don't know where they came from. Probably like desperation. Eventually I think that's where most comedy comes from. It helps that I come from a family of jokers. So, that's how we interface with the world, where our emotions are so strong we have to make fun of them. So, but I watch a lot of comedy. I grew up on Mel Brooks and a lot of British humor. And so I think that really like forms and I'll read anything that has a good joke. Like I'll read it. So that's always been something that's been really important to me and that I try to think about a lot. Hopefully the next one will also have jokes. I'm working on that right now.
I love it. So does anyone have a final question?
I don't want to hear a passage.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say something, Elizabeth. Right in chapter 1, in fact, on the first page, if you discount what happens on, the CNN breaking email, I absolutely loved what you wrote, because this little paragraph here where you talk about the more you remember, the more you expand your perception of personal time. We can't outrun death. If we muscle up our memories, the race at least will seem a little longer. That is, we'll still die, but we'll have lived. I absolutely loved it, and I've actually gone back and read it like 4 times because I thought it was inspirational. I loved it. It was fabulous.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I am super terrified of death. So it's something. Yeah, I try to think about a lot of how to just really maximize the time that we're here, and especially becoming a mom, because you see the little ones, they grow up so fast, and I try to remind myself to make my memory really big and to take it all in and keep it there.
And we'd love to have you read a passage for us, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, I will. Although the passage I picked out is the bloodiest one.
Yay!
Because I don't know. This is terrible, Mom. I love you. I'm not reading the passage for a reason, but for some reason, there's something about the passage where Jane finds her mother's body and disassociates from it that I think, for me, is really like, you can really generalize to sort of any kind of trauma, and that's really what this passage about. It's, the body's a metaphor. So everyone always asks what my first thought was when I found her, but it wasn't like that. I didn't have any thoughts at all until much later. I was mixed up before I even opened my eyes, still reeling from the previous night's dire combination of blended whiskey, prescription painkillers, and agonizingly fatuous conversation. And anyway, thought was beside the point. When I walked into my mother's room, part of me already knew. Whether that was because I sensed that something was wrong or because I myself had done that wrong something, well, that's a $16.5 million question. Then before I realized what I was doing, I was down on the floor with my face next to what was left of her, shouting in one bloodied ear while scooping up tissue and viscera and bone. I'm sorry, I hope you guys aren't about to have lunch. Like, isn't it? Trying to spackle her over like she was a bucket and I was dear Liza. Of course, by that point, it wasn't of any use. No matter what my clownishly optimistic therapists and social workers have tried to tell me, that mourning isn't something I'll ever be able to get over or process or come to terms with. A person can't stumble on their murdered mother and expect to be fine and dandy the day or the year or the decade after. No, lucky me, I get to hold on to this particular experience for the rest of my life. It's like that house guest who leaves his dirty underwear in your bathroom and open cans of tuna in the kitchen, or worse, the other way around. And no matter how nicely you ask, refuses to leave. That actually happened to me once. I lived with There's not much in here that's true, but that was. But I'm not lying when I say that it is better than it used to be. Less a crippling terror than a sustained cognitive dissonance. Something I'm so used to that I can almost forget it's there, unless I make the mistake of thinking about it. Then it's impossible to think of anything else, like blinking, breathing, the feel of your tongue in your mouth. But instead of your tongue, it's your fingers, and instead of your mouth, it's your mother's blood. It's so, I'm so sorry, but for me, so much of this book is about a girl sort of learning to overcome a lot of trauma and sort of to move past it. And at this point in the book, she can't possibly imagine that. You know, she's still really, really in it. And something that I find inspirational about Jane is that she does get some emotional closure by the end of the book. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it like a storybook ending, but I think that she does find really what she needs.
Right. This is actually a question that's coming from Anita6 on Twitter. I quite like it. She says, how do you view the position of women in modern society today from your perspective?
Well, this book should give you a big sense of what it is. So many of the relationships in this book, especially the sexual relationships, are very transactional. And Jane herself is she's turned into something of a commodity. And so that was definitely something I was exploring. And living in Los Angeles, that's something you see all the time. I'm surrounded by stunningly beautiful women who are also like miserable because, they have to go to auditions and be judged on how gorgeous they are. And that's not even the words that most people use out here. It's much cruder language. I went to I had a cold once, and I went into a doctor, and he was looking at my ears, and he was like, so one of your ear canals is kind of small, and I just wanted to let you know, because that's going to be a complication when you get a facelift, so be sure to tell your plastic surgeon. And I was like, I'm 30. And his face just looked like, so being really aware of how women are objectified is definitely something that informed this book. But I think that sort of female friendship is the great counter to sort of female oppression, and that's what this book is. Like Jane, she forms relationships with 3 women, and that's really the thing that helps her become stronger and able to really confront what's happened. And I think that's the same, and I think it's not just feminism, which I think is tricky, but like really intersectional feminism, where but women and women of color can really all come together to actually support one another and band together and address the real problems. So that's kind of what this book is, but with murder.
Also, there's a question in from Malika. She says, you've opened the book with Paris Hilton quote. What kind of research went into uncovering the it girl lifestyle and portraying it so accurately? And did you shadow the Hiltons or the Kardashians at all?
By the way, this quote is amazing. Some girls are just born with glitter in their veins. That's probably the best thing Paris Hilton has ever said.
I think you can get it like embroidered on purses now. Part of it is because I am enough of a pop culture junkie that I've been following, Hilton since the beginning. The first literary agency I ever worked for handled her book, Confessions of an Heiress. I remember on the second day I worked there, it was her book party. And they were like, "Oh, are you going to come to the book party?" And I was like, "No, I can't." And it's like, what would I do being around famous people? I couldn't do it. So I felt like I had a good sense of certainly how the media responds to It Girls, and you know, being like sort of on the fringes of Hollywood, enough gossip has filtered down to me that it was helpful. I also did things, you know, like I read The Bling Ring, which is a really fun book. I also, like, I know weirdly that Paris Hilton and I have the same shoe size. Like, I don't know my son's shoe size, but I know that Paris Hilton wears an 11. And part of me wants to be like, can I have your cast box? But also, do I really want to put my feet in there? So, yeah, there wasn't much, you know, I certainly wasn't going to clubs and sort of interacting with young Hollywood, but I felt like I probably had a good sense of how it is.
Awesome. Any last questions, Anushka?
That's about it.
That's
I think
about
I can totally write a book about Kim Kardashian.
I know. I think it's time. Any last piece of advice to young authors, and of course everyone is this hangout. I know there's a book in me, but I just don't know how to get it out. Any advice for all of us over here who are so impressed and so excited that you hung out with us today?
Well, take whatever your favorite book or TV show or movie is. Figure out why you love it so much, and then try to bring that same thing to life in your own work. I mean, I didn't just read, you know, like great British literature. Like, I watched Buffy, I watched X-Files, I watch, you know, TV and storytelling in all of its forms is so important. So just soak it up like a sponge, and then just make something that you would love, and hopefully other people will love it too.
That's amazing. Elizabeth, thank you so much. We're so excited that you hung out with us. We totally feel like we could be friends with you. At least we hope so. And we're going to be giving Anita and Monica signed copies of the book because we love their questions. So you get this. And actually, I love your signature.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. Look at that.
My mother is really messy. She's like, how do you sign things like that?
It's cool. It's like it's all in code, which I love. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you, Asta and Shrimi and Mishti, who's having internet connections, and Tina. And we hope to do another book soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this hangout. We're going to be back every Friday on MM Fridays. Bye.